When someone passes, go through the usual steps. Typically, a funeral home is involved, embalming and a burial or a cremation, something of that nature is what usually takes place. And the people who do that, usually reputable, at least you hope they're reputable. It's what they do. The last thing you expect to have happen is to get a call a couple months or years later saying, yeah, your loved one, they're in a stack of bodies, 190 of them, down the hall by the Coke machine at the funeral home that you took him to, the funeral home that's all about returning people to nature. In fact, that's the name of it, Return to Nature Funeral Home in Colorado. 190 bodies, actually 189. I don't know, maybe they lost count. It's got to be hard to count 190 bodies that are literally deteriorating on top of each other. How something like this happens is, I think, the biggest question everyone has right off the bat. How does something like this happen? Laurie Gilbertson, former prosecutor, joining us from Colorado. Not a lot of regulations in your state on funeral homes, it
Mhm.
appears.
Yeah, and the very name of this funeral home of Return to Nature, as you were saying it, the irony is not lost here. And how does it start? Yes, of course, the lack of regulation, but that's not what leads to 189 or 190 bodies rotting somewhere so terribly that people start to call
Yeah.
because of the smell. And ultimately, it's discovered. I mean, what it really starts with is greed
Yeah.
and grift and taking advantage of the grief of vulnerable people at a really terrible time in their lives. And here are these people left with, I think of the one, the parents who talked about having their daughter in, a glass urn with love written on it. And they learn these years later that those are not, in fact, the ashes of their daughter,
No, it's
and in
quick.
fact they don't even know what it is. I
Yeah.
mean, it's really just trampling over the grief of people in this really horrendous way,
I'm just,
and to treat, yeah, the bodies with such disrespect is a little mind-boggling to think of. What did this funeral home really get out of it? and,
yeah.
and my thought with that is money. They didn't spend the money to do the things that they needed to do. They just took people's money, made money off of it, and didn't give them what they promised.
It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, quite honestly. I mean, we're talking about
Yeah.
these bodies were supposed to be cremated. They did supposedly have the
Mhm.
means to do it. Why would you stack up 190 I mean, I mean, obviously, it's now being investigated. The
Mhm.
EPA has now stepped in
Yeah.
to actually get rid of the building because it's such a health hazard. But they were going into work there. They were actually
I know.
conducting
Mhm.
business in
Mhm.
this structure. I just that boggles the
Yeah.
mind. Unless you have a hazmat suit on, wouldn't that be so toxic that you could literally die from just inhaling in that building?
Hopefully you wouldn't die there
Yeah.
because nothing good is going to happen to you there.
Yeah, that's true.
Um, excuse the dark humor, but as we talk about this,
Yeah.
it really is terrible. Um, yeah, it's good the EPA is investigating. It does sound like there are so many things that could come out of even just having one body
Mhm.
there as opposed to hundreds of them. We haven't heard a whole lot from the owners or the people who work there or the people who run it. And I think that as things continue to come to light, we'll get a better sense of really how this did start and why it ended up this way. It's certainly not the first funeral home that we've seen in the news, probably over the past year or so. I think where there's something similar to
Mhm.
this, if not exactly the same. So I think we just really need to have some more information
When
to really know, the
Yeah.
why of it, but actually the actual logistics of how this happened and how it was able to continue to happen over the years, especially with people working there.
A scary thing that, many probably are not aware of is the fact that there's an industry for this. There's an industry for the
Mhm.
body parts, if you will. Of course, there's the organ
Mhm.
industry, but then there's
Mhm.
also people who collect this sort of stuff, people who actually want limbs and bones and skulls, and that's a very unregulated industry. It actually does exist. I'm wondering if there's more to this story that goes down one of those routes because yes, we have heard 189 bodies. We haven't heard 189 bodies intact. That's another part of this.
Wow.
That's what I'm wondering
I
is if there was some other money grab going on here other than just here's the money and here's quickcrete and an urn. I'm curious if there was something else at play here, and if this stems off like a spider to many other areas of
Mhm.
people, doing business with this funeral home to take parts of these bodies.
I actually didn't even think of that and didn't know that there was a market for that. So thank you for opening up that world to
Just
me right
Google it.
now. Good to gain some knowledge. I always do when I talk with you, Tony. I always do. And it just goes back to the greed and the grift. And
Yeah,
is there more?
yeah.
Is there more there? Right? It's not just it has to be more when I think about it than just bad business. It has to be more than just it was too hard to put the bodies
Mhm.
into a crematorium and cremate them and give people the ashes, and they
Sure.
didn't want to do the work of that, and they just want to take the money. It does sound like there could be something more, and if it does go down that path that we find that they were actually selling body parts to people, um, into this kind of dark industry, that will be something else that will be really interesting to talk about.
I think there's a lot more to this story. We'll keep
Mhm.
watching it to see where it goes. Obviously, just beyond disturbing. Hey, it's Tony Brueski. If you want more of our interview with our guests, be sure to check out our podcast, Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. Just search that wherever you download podcasts and press subscribe. Also, you can check out our YouTube channel for the full video version of the interviews as well, under the same name, Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. Check it out, subscribe, binge, and enjoy. Thanks for watching.